Get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Brown School's Virtual Admitted Students Week. This session is called Living and Learning in St. Louis. My name is Alli Gillespie. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. I'm a second-year dual degree MSW and MPH student with an individualized concentration in gender, migration, and humanitarian response. I'm also a student ambassador with the Office of Admissions and Recruitment, so I'll be facilitating our incredible panel of students this morning. But before we get started, I would like to begin by acknowledging the land and the peoples that we are occupying. So the region known as St. Louis occupies the ancestral lands of Native peoples who were removed unjustly, and we in our communities are the beneficiaries of that removal. So in St. Louis, I am on Osage, Miami, Sioux, Kickapoo, and Iroquois land. We talk a lot about justice and equity at the Brown School, but there is no justice or equity until this land is returned to its original stewards. I also want to acknowledge before we get started that university students inherently contribute to gentrification, including the displacement of longtime community residents. So my fellow white folks, especially, please be mindful of this and practice humility in your relocation to St. Louis. So with that said, admitted students, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can include your name, pronouns, hometown, or where you're currently living, and your program or specialization. You can also use the map at this link I posted to honor the native stewards of the land where you are on today. You're welcome to keep your camera on or off, but please keep yourself muted during the session and note that the session is being recorded. All right, so I have 5 questions prepared, and then I'll open up the floor to questions from admitted students. So if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat and say which question the panelist is for, if applicable. So panelists, will start by having you introduce yourselves with your name, pronouns, year, and program, as well as your concentration and or specialization and what St. Louis neighborhood or area you live in. So we'll go ahead and get started with Hannah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hannah. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently a third-year social work, social policy dual student. I'm originally from Berkeley, California. I've also spent a lot of time on the East Coast in New York. I did my undergrad there. And I've been in St. Louis for almost 3 years now, and I've been in South City the entire time. I currently live in Benton Park West. Yeah, was that all the questions, Alli?
Yes, thank you, Hannah. Welcome. And next, if we can have Xandi introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Xandi. I use she, her pronouns. I am a second-year MSW student doing domestic social economic development. I'm originally from Laurel, Maryland. I did undergrad at WashU, so I've been in and out of the city for 6 years, and was in Shaw neighborhood last year, but I'm now located in U City.
Thanks, Xandi. And next is Polly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Polly. I use she, her pronouns. I am a first-year MPH student. I'm an epi-biostats concentration. I'm originally from Kansas City, and I currently live in Tower Grove.
Welcome. Next is Ugbaad.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ugbaad. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Minnesota. I skipped over something. I am currently a second-year Master's of Public Health student specializing in global health. I submitted my capstone late this morning, so like very much on the second-year train. Yeah, let's snap to that. And I currently live in the Central West End.
Great, welcome. And next is Zee.
Hi, hello. I am Zoe. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I am a first-year MSW student concentrating in children, youth, and families. I'm originally from West Windsor, New Jersey, but also spent a lot of time living in New York. Right now, I live in University City, St. Louis.
Great, thanks, Zoe. And Erik?
Good morning, y'all. So happy to be here to share the space with you. I am Erik Strange. I use he, him pronouns. I am in the second year, definitely on that train. It seems like it's going up though, of my MSW in the older adults and aging societies concentration. And I live in Rock Hill, which is a little exurb about 15 minutes away from campus in the county. So
Great, thanks, Erik. And last but not least, Emmanuel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emmanuel. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a second year MSW student, and I'm focusing on research and international social and economic development. I am originally from Ghana, and I'm currently living in U City, just about like 10 to 15 minutes walk from campus.
Great, thank you. All right, so now we'll move into our questions. So our first question is, what do you love about the neighborhood you live in and what made you choose it? So we'll start with Erik.
thanks, Allie. So I have a family.
Uh-oh.
A
Erik.
newborn of 1 year old. A space that, what's up?
You're a little frozen, but I think you unfroze, so go ahead.
Shoot. So yeah, I live in Rock Hill, as I stated before, and that's about 10, 15 minutes away from campus. And it's just like a lot of beautiful green space, a very walkable, like little downtown. So we really wanted that kind of combination between the kind of walkable spaces, but also trying to be like 15 minutes away from everything, which is pretty easy in St. Louis. Like if all y'all aren't familiar with it, you can get most places in about 20, 25 minutes, give or take. But we like, I have a mother-in-law who is out about 15 minutes away in West County. And if we live further in the city, that would take about, 30 minutes. So we wanted somewhere kind of more centrally located, and we really dig it. So if anyone like is not interested in living in like the hubs of like, the round campus that the U Cities, Central West End, please email me. I'll throw that in the chat and we can discuss what it's like out here in the county.
Great, thank you, Erik. Same question for Ugbaad.
Yeah, so last year I actually lived on the Del Mar Loop, and I had a roommate, and we had like a really great apartment, and it was like huge and spacious. But this year I decided to live alone, and Central West End is still, at the time, like I was just like, let me just find a place with like wherever I can find like the cheapest rent, honestly, being very candid here. And thankfully I was able to find something like a nice little studio in the Central West End. So that's how I ended up here. But I also lived in the Loop last year, so definitely kind of a different vibe. And also I think that like a huge thing to highlight in this entire conversation is the impact that COVID has had on all of these neighborhoods. So that's also like a really big thing to highlight, and how the atmosphere in a lot of the different places in St. Louis has changed. But for the most part, the Central West End is like calm for me.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, that it might look a little bit different than when we first got here, at least. And Hannah, what do you love about your neighborhood?
Yeah, I really love my neighborhood. I live in Benton Park West, and that's maybe like 20, 25 minutes driving away from campus. So I like being out of the Brown School bubble. I like being away from the Loop. Loop is like not my favorite neighborhood in St. Louis. I know other people really love it, but it's not my favorite. And so my neighborhood is like really, like my apartment is like super, super cheap. It's really affordable. I'm also like, St. Louis is kind of like a driving city, and it's like my neighborhood is pretty walkable. So I can like walk to like Cherokee Street, which has a lot of great restaurants and bars. I can walk to other like coffee shops, my favorite shops. I can walk to Tower Grove Park if I feel like a longer walk, and I'm really close to Tower Grove Park driving. I can walk to Grand. So I just feel like my neighborhood is like really walkable, which I really appreciate. But with all of that, like there's definitely like things that I want to acknowledge. Like my neighborhood is historically Black, but is rapidly gentrifying. And I'm definitely like part of the problem. Like university students are coming into this neighborhood a lot more, displacing a lot of community members who've been here for a long time. A lot of vacants are being flipped and like sold for like astronomical prices, even like especially for this neighborhood, even for like on like St. Louis standards. So that is something that like I have to kind of like think about and like struggle with a lot, and thinking about how I'm showing up and trying to like build community in my neighborhood, even though like I benefit a lot from it. So, and I could talk about that for a lot longer, but.
All right, so our next question is, how did you find your housing? And if applicable, how did you find your roommates? So for this question, we'll start with Polly.
Yeah, so like I said, I live in Tower Grove, and I actually found my housing on Zillow. So I kind of knew like the neighborhoods that I wanted to be in, and I was a little bit late to the housing game. I think I started looking, before moving back to St. Louis, I've been in Spain, and I moved back in like early August, and that was when I started looking for an apartment. So I think I actually moved to St. Louis like the 1st of September. And the roommate question, I feel like it's cheating a little bit because I do have a roommate, but it's my sister. So she's kind of like a built-in roommate. I didn't really have to search for her.
Thanks, Polly. And same question for Emmanuel.
Okay, so for me, it is very wonky because I'm from Ghana and I got to the US 1st of August 2019, knowing literally nobody in the States. So what I did was I got connected to an African Student Union on WashU campus, and there was an African student who was in 2nd year looking for a roommate. So that was how I got connected. So I had no idea where I was about to leave. All I knew was I have a friend, I have somebody also from Africa who's looking for a roommate. So I was like, oh yeah, we are African, so let's room together. So just to decide, we all came to the place, inspect the apartment, check the price, it was okay, we could afford it. It is spacious, and we've been living together for the past maybe almost 2 years now. So it was just being connected by the African Student Union. It is called the BISASA, or the Black Student Association of the Panelists School. So where we meet probably sometimes once a month, bi-weekly. So based on those connections, I was able to find somebody who was also looking for a roommate, and we were able to connect, and we are now living together.
That's great. Thanks, Emmanuel. And last person for this question, Zee, how did you find your housing, and if applicable, your roommates?
Okay. Well, the long answer to this question is a tale. The short answer is that so since I was starting in August and COVID was, COVIDing, I kept expecting WashU to like pull the rug out from under us and be like, all online. So I kind of really waited to look for housing. So it was the beginning of August. It was like, okay, guess I'm moving to St. Louis in 2 weeks. I need to live somewhere. And I saw a posting for a sublet on a Brown School admitted students page, someone who had been accepted but not enrolled because of COVID, who had an apartment here, who needed to sublet it because she wasn't going to be here. So I got that room. It is in a lovely, beautiful 3-bedroom apartment. My roommates were like her friends, like all WashU grads. And it's worked out that I get to live here permanently now. So worked out very nicely, but just kind of a matter of luck and circumstance.
Thanks, Zoe. All right, and our next question is, how far away do you live from the Brown School, and what methods of transportation do you use? And this could be, what methods of transportation do you use to get to the school, but also just like if you're going around the city, how do you go about that? So first, let's hear from Xandi.
So I am carless mostly by choice. Last year I lived in Shaw, which was like 30 minutes by train, metro, and bus. So I took that last year. Now I'm living in New City. It's a lot closer to campus, but because of COVID, I'm using my bike to get around everywhere. St. Louis is, if you make it, it can be a bikeable and transit city. You just kind of have to know how to do it. So if you have any questions about that, let me know.
Great, thank you. And same question for Hannah.
Yeah, I drive everywhere. I walk when I can, but otherwise I'm driving. Especially like they've kind of got their act together with like the metro going like east-west, but like north-south, like St. Louis is like just a lot of really like delayed slow bus lines. So there's a lot of, again, like thoughts I could say about like gentrification and like the development of like the central corridor in St. Louis, and how like the north and the south are like left out of that. But that's definitely a big part of like a sacrifice that you'd have like living in South City. I really, really love like the neighborhoods down here. There's also like not really great public transit unless you want to wait for buses for a long time. So I drive.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Emmanuel for this one. And this question is, if you had a weekend off from school in St. Louis and you had no homework and you had no work and it was a beautiful day, how would you spend your weekend? And you can include pre or post-COVID activities if you would like.
Okay, so actually I did something just this Sunday. I would say one thing I would love to do that I would always want to do is to go to the zoo. And I was there just this Sunday. And I mean, amazingly, it is free to get in. So I've been indoors for a long time. So my friends were like, oh, let's go to the zoo. And I never said no. So if there's no schoolwork, there are no assignments due, and I'm literally free, I would want to quickly get on with some friends and then walk to the zoo. Actually, I live about probably maybe less than 20 minutes walk from the zoo and the museum, which are free. So, I mean, if I have nothing doing, for sure, I'm going to the zoo for free.
And Polly?
Yeah, so I have only lived here in post-COVID times, but one thing that I really love about St. Louis is just how much green space there is. So if I'm like 2 blocks away from Tower Grove Park, so usually on the weekends, I will like go for a run or just spend time like reading in the park. And I'm also only like a 15-minute drive from Tower Grove Park. So I just really like being outside and especially right now, enjoying the weather and seeing everyone else out and about. So definitely go to the parks. That's my favorite thing in St. Louis so far.
Yeah, and I would just have to say all the cherry blossoms are in bloom right now in St. Louis, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Ugh, so pretty. Okay, and Erik.
Thanks, Alli. Yeah, Emmanuel, Polly, great suggestions. Like the zoo is just amazing. And yeah, all the parks like Tower Grove and Forest Park in particular, where shout out some of the cultural institutions. So like my favorite museum here is called the Pulitzer Arts Foundation. And pre and post COVID, they're actually doing a new exhibit that's all outside. It's called Wayfinding. It's around their green spaces around the museum. So it'd be somewhere right there. They do a lot of poetry readings that international, national renowned poets come and read. And the symphony will sometimes play there as well. So I'd start there. I'd kind of, maybe if it was a little bit earlier, I'd go to one of my favorite coffee shops in Maplewood, which has like a row of like 3 of the best, like the Living Room and La Casaccia in particular are just great. It's about 10 minutes from campus and just the best coffee in the city, bar none. If anybody wants to at me, go ahead. I think it stands up. And La Casaccia has a happy hour, half price espresso drinks from 2 to 3 p.m. So it's a nice like, oh, in between class or something, you want to head down to Maplewood. It's a great stop if that's still going on. Yeah, and then I think late night I would go to like the High Point Theater, like which is close to Forest Park, kind of close to campus. It's an older like independent movie theater that is still in operation. So because a lot of concert venues right now aren't, that would be my usual go-to because there's a lot of great places to see shows. Hopefully post-pandemic there will be as well.
Thanks, Erik. So my next question is about Practicum, since this is not only about living in St. Louis, but also learning in St. Louis. So we'll hear from two folks about Practicum, and we'll start with Zoe. Where are you doing your Practicum?
Yeah, I'm doing my Practicum with the University City School District. I work at Brittany Woods Middle School, which is the only middle school in the district. As a social work intern, I see students and like help manage like resource, like searching, whatever. Sorry, words are not coming to me right now. One of like my main like project that is something that I'm doing while I'm here is I'm conducting an assessment on like the climate of my school, like queer culture acceptance stuff, so that we can, moving forward, think of interventions to implement to increase like the safety and connectedness of queer students in our community. I really, really love the opportunity to work in the community I'm living in. It makes me feel connected and like I can be part of this community instead of just someone who's here to get my education and then leaving in the ditch.
Thanks, Zoe. And Practicum, Ugbaad, where are you doing your Practicum now, or where have you done your Practicum?
Oh, Practicum, the joys of COVID. Okay, so last summer, I was supposed to be in Malawi, where I was going to be working with the Minga Foundation, and it was going to be another MPH student and I, like a great friend actually, Layla, and we were supposed to go down and do work around sexual and reproductive health, and specifically around maternal and child health. And then coronavirus happened, but thankfully we were still able to work with the Minga Foundation during the summer remotely. So I was still able to complete my practicum during the summer without any issues doing that remotely. And I think that is just something, I think for me, I'm just like a firm believer in like just figuring out how to just utilize or flip the script in whatever ways that can benefit you the most. So under those circumstances, I think it was just like being able to be as adaptable and like malleable in the situation and putting that on my CV, as opposed to being able to put that I spent a summer in Malawi working directly with communities that I am, like a part of and wanted to work amongst with. But for the most part, it was really great to still be able to do the remote practicum. And it was really interesting in the summer as well, doing that work at home under the circumstances of COVID and everything that was going on. And like I said, I'm from Minnesota, and as you all probably know, in the summer, all of the protests and the tragic death, the tragic killing of George Floyd that had happened. So that was also something that like I had to kind of figure out the best way to deal with practicum and being on the ground and helping people in the city. So again, being adaptable, that's definitely something that you will learn in graduate school, and figuring out the best way to just kind of make things the most that you can make out of them, and doing it in ways that not only benefit you, but benefit the people that you want to work with and make a positive impact amongst.
Thank you. I'm sorry your practicum got canceled or shifted into a new medium. Yeah. Yeah, prior to COVID, and hopefully someday, the Brown School does offer like global practicum opportunities if you're a global health major or global health concentration or a international SEB concentration. Of course, that's not a reality right now, but hopefully that will start up again in the future. All right, so next is my last question before we open up the floor for any questions that y'all have. So this is more of a fun one, and it is, what are your top 3 favorite restaurants in St. Louis? So for this one, we'll start with Xandi.
This is such a tough question because whenever people ask me why I love St. Louis, I always talk about how there's great cheap food, but I will limit it to 3. So my first is Gokul, which is on the Loop. It's a vegetarian Indian buffet, always a buffet, not just lunch, dinner too. Love that. Soul Taco, which is like a Korean kind of taco hybrid restaurant, really good. And the last is Meskrim. It's an Ethiopian restaurant on South Grand. And South Grand has like 14 different kinds of cuisine in like a 2 or 3 block radius. So it's really great.
Great options. I haven't been to that last one you mentioned, but Gokul and Soul Taco, I back both of those up. Okay, next we'll hear from Zoe. What are your top 3 favorite restaurants?
I'm such a bad candidate for this question because like don't really go to a lot of restaurants, especially in the COVID time. So I'm kind of scraping my memory of like, where did I like to go when I was an undergrad? Because I did undergrad at WashU. So my answers are Bailey's Range, which is like a burger place downtown. They have like really fully customizable like burgers and really good milkshakes. And you can get 2 different flavors of milkshake and 1 milkshake, which I appreciate. And Mi Ranchito, which is a Mexican restaurant that's like 2 minutes from my house. They have a gigantic menu. I love a gigantic menu. Like whatever you can imagine, you can get. And then I've been to this place exactly once, but I have a very fond memory of it. I also don't know if it's ever going to reopen, so apologies. But the Melting Pot on the Loop, which is like a fondue restaurant. I was taken there for my birthday once when I was undergrad, and it was just like a delightful time. Very expensive though.
Thank you. Okay, and next is Ugbaad.
Man, this is hard. Okay, definitely agree with Soul Taco. That's like, there's like a time where I was just like, oh my God, like I really need to stop eating Soul Taco. It was bad. Soul Taco, what else? I'm not blanking because there isn't good food in St. Louis. I'm just blanking because there's like so much good food in St. Louis. Okay, I will say I went to, and this was before COVID as well. No, I think I like grabbed food to go. Kathy's Kitchen in Ferguson has like another one of those restaurants where it's like a huge menu, and they have like a bunch of like famous people on the wall, and like Kathy's like always there. Like when I went there a few times before coronavirus, really great soul food. And on, oh crap. Oh, I recently had Jamaican food, which is like another thing that I wasn't expecting to have like good Jamaican food in St. Louis. It's called the Palm Restaurant in University City. And like I've been to like New York City a lot and like just like the East Coast. And that's like where I expect like good Jamaican, Caribbean, like, oh, give me good plantain, like all that good stuff. But the Jamaican food in St. Louis is also giving, y'all. So give it a chance, you know what I mean? But yeah, definitely switch it up. I think like Xandi said, definitely a lot of different restaurants and ethnic cuisines that you can find in St. Louis.
Thank you. Hannah?
I have like, again, like such a difficult time answering this question. Like I love food, and especially I think during COVID, it's been like my mission to like, this has been like my joy of like getting different takeout, like from different restaurants and stuff like that in St. Louis. My partner and I have like a spreadsheet of all the restaurants that we love in St. Louis. So if you end up in St. Louis and want that spreadsheet, let me know. Because I, unlike the other people, cannot, like I can't limit myself to 3. So I've like broken my recommendations for you all into 3 brackets. So like cheap eats, my 2 favorites are U City Grill, which does like, I don't know, less than $10 like bibimbap. It's in U City off of Delmar. Super like cheap, fast, really good Korean food. And then on Cherokee, Tacos and Ice Cream does Dollar Taco Tuesdays, even during COVID. And that is like, they also have ice cream, but they actually have like pretty decent tacos for like $1 tacos. So that's, yeah, that's like my go-to taco place. And then there's like a mid-city, like a mid-range favorites. Erik posted Balkan Treat Box, which I totally agree with. That's kind of like Bosnian food, which is super good. That's in Webster Groves. Kate Zone is my favorite Chinese place, and that's on Olive. Really good. I would recommend going there with friends just because they do like really big like family style dishes. And they also do take out pretty decently. Also Lona's Little Eats in Fox Park is amazing. Really good, like Asian fusion. They do like rice wraps, a lot of like build your own noodle bowls, rice bowls, and things like that. And then Sultan Mediterranean in the Grove is really great, like Middle Eastern food. They have like a Turkish style fattoush and a like savory rice stuffed like phyllo dough pastry thing, and like pistachio custard, which is like amazing. And my friend once went and like told them how much they loved the pistachio custard, and they gave them an extra one. So they're really nice there also. And there's also like really good like upper tier like nicer restaurants, which are more like treat yourself for like when family's in town. But I would even say like coming from like coastal cities where like those like upper like fine dining options were like super like expensive, and like I would never go there. Like in St. Louis, they're like less so expensive and like more accessible, like not every single day, but still like pretty like very good. And that's not even talking about like bars and coffee shops. So yeah, there's Small Change is like my favorite cocktail like dive bar. They sell like $2 Bush and then like $10 cocktails. So it's a really fun, that's like my favorite like off the beaten track bar that I tell everyone to go to. Sorry, Alli, that was more than 3 I could.
I think Hannah could talk about this all day if we kept going. No, thank you for that. That was great. I see someone in the chat says go-to coffee shops. Thanks, Sheer. Stump Coffee, Fiddlehead Fern. Any other panelists want to add any? I know, Erik, you mentioned one in Maplewood. Do you have any others that you?
Yeah, I think Hannah's got them covered. La Cosecha is my top of the list with that happy hour, and then the Living Room, which is like a block south of there, which also is just amazing. Great.
Thank you. Emmanuel, Polly, do you have, Ugbaad, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna add with the coffee shops, Northwest Coffee Shop in Central West End. It's like they have a bunch of like outdoor seating, and they always have like really good music playing, and the coffee's like really great, and it's Black owned, so it's like fun.
Thank you for adding that. Polly, Emmanuel, any
I would second. Yeah, I would definitely second Northwest Coffee. That's one of my favorite spots, especially in the COVID era, because they have so much like outdoor seating. You can usually find a place. I'm definitely guilty of going back to the same restaurants, so I'm going to take these suggestions and try to expand my palette. One place I do really love is Hartford Coffee too. It's in Tower Grove. They have coffee and they also have a lot of food options there, and it is very inexpensive. So it's a good place to go, and then you can go walk through the park.
Okay. See a few more added in the chat. Marianne's Tea Room, very gay. And Hartford has the best chai tea lattes. All right, well, so those are all the questions that I had planned. So I just wanted to open up the floor. If anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand or just unmute yourself. And they can be for any of our panelists, or if there's like a question that I asked that one of the panelists did not get a chance to answer and you'd like to hear from them, you can do that as well. So opening the floor. All right.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I can't have my camera on because I stepped out of work and I work in a health clinic, but it's so good to see all of you and hear from you. And I really appreciate you taking this time to, talk a little bit about your experience. something I've been grappling with is, as someone coming from the East Coast, born and raised out here, Connecticut, now living in Boston, building my roots here, to be going to a totally new city where, you know, there's really rich and intense history, you know, of course, somewhat familiar, but don't know that much. Curious to hear what that experience is like, and especially learning about social work, talking a lot about community engagement and intentional, you know, space and building relationships in, you know, a sensitive and intentional way. All of these things, like, I'm curious to hear what folks' feelings and thoughts are on that, who uprooted and moved to St. Louis to study social work.
Thank you, Leah. Would any panelists like to take this question?
I think for me, first of all, like, really great question. For myself, for someone moving, so I moved here from Minnesota, and, you know, just I'll be like very candid here. Also, like, side note, I used to work with the incredible admissions team here, so I'm kind of familiar with the vibe of a lot of the questions that may or may not come about. But before I moved to St. Louis, I remember like a bunch of people used to be like, oh my God, like, you're moving to St. Louis, like, isn't it like extremely dangerous? Or, oh my God, like, didn't Ferguson happen there? Like, are you going to be like living there? You know, so there were like a lot of questions that like a lot of my friends or even my family had asked me before moving here. And it's really interesting because like a few nights ago, I like randomly stumbled across the, not randomly, but I was just like creeping on the Nextdoor app. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that. But with the Nextdoor app, what I've realized is that just like any other city anywhere in the world, just literally, whether it be St. Louis, whether it be Minneapolis, whether it be Southern California, New York, Brooklyn, wherever it is, every city has safe spaces. It has spaces that you wouldn't want to go there by yourself in the middle of the night. It has neighborhoods and areas that you have to be cognizant of whether or not you want to be there jogging in the evening or whether you're going to be there grabbing a coffee early in the morning. What I'm trying to get at is that I think safety and any other hesitations that any of you may have prior to moving to St. Louis is fair, but I think that you could have those hesitations or that level of questioning with any other city in the world. That's what I'm really trying to get at. And I think that a lot of times people, and what I was trying to say about the Nextdoor app is that I saw so many comments and people like writing like their grievances on these like huge posts on the Nextdoor app, even about like my own neighborhood here in the Central West End, things that I have literally never experienced in the past like year, close to 2 years that I've been living in St. Louis. People talking about like, oh, my car got broken into, or, oh, I don't want to live in St. Louis anymore. And I'm like, oh my God, like I literally have never experienced any of this. I've only experienced like joy, safety, peace, incredible neighbors, like incredible restaurants going to. And I think that a lot of times it comes with, you know, the stereotypes and biases and really these really easily misconstrued biases about any city that you may have. But I think that it's really critical for what I'm trying to get at, long story short, is that until you live in St. Louis or until you live in the city that you move to, you really cannot explain or say, oh, this is a good place to live, or this isn't a safe space to live, or whatever the case may be, until you live there for yourself.
Thank you, Ugbaad, for highlighting those issues and just what your own experience has been here. All right, we have a number of questions in the chat, so I'll go ahead and pick one of these next. So can anyone speak more to bike commuting in STL? Are there neighborhoods or streets that are better or worse for bike safety? So I'm going to throw this to Xandi first, just because I know you're a biker here, but after Xandi, anyone else can feel free to.
Yeah, so like I said, since COVID, I've basically been biking around everywhere. And I think like the great thing about St. Louis is like it's a Midwestern city, so the roads are pretty wide. And there are a lot of roads that aren't that busy. So you can very easily kind of find your routes around the city. Like Google Maps is a great starting place, but then like working from there to be like, oh, this road like has great surface to ride on and like it's not super busy, so it feels safe. When I am like biking home, there's like only kind of one stretch of like Skinker that I don't feel super safe kind of crossing. But besides that, I always feel super comfortable biking around the city.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to biking, or perhaps we've gotten a few questions about public transportation?
I can speak a little bit to the public transit as well. So public transit and like non-car transportation is like my passion. It's kind of what I focus on a little bit. So I'm very familiar with like the pros and cons of transit in St. Louis. Lots of cons, but there's a lot of ways to get around that. I think like if you're coming here and you want to not rely on a car to get around, like it's you have to be intentional about like where you want to live, like in relation to what like other things are going to be in your life, like the grocery store and school and like work. If you can find yourself along like there are a couple bus lines that are pretty fast, like the 70 on Grand runs every 12 minutes. If you can like align yourself on one of like the bus lines that runs pretty frequently and get you to the metro that goes east-west, then you kind of have the city open to you. But you do have to be really intentional about it.
Thank you. And just one note that when you come to WashU, you get a free metro and bus pass just by being a student. So if that's something you're relying on, it will be like free to you as a student. Next question. How is winter really in St. Louis? Did anyone move here from a warm weather spot that wants to speak to winter in St. Louis? Anna, I think I saw you.
Yeah, I'm from California and I lived in New York before. So but winter in New York is very different than winter in St. Louis. So I think that this winter actually hasn't been like that bad. I think it hasn't been like too bad for me. I think the biggest struggles that I've had with St. Louis winters is just that the roads a lot of the time are not plowed super quickly, especially in like something like the South City, like in my neighborhood, because it's like still like a mixed income, like lower income, like neighborhood. It like the roads don't get plowed very quickly at all. So there is like some like politics behind like the neighborhoods that get plowed first. And then also parking during the snow is really difficult. And like since I do drive to campus and I don't pay for a parking permit on campus, like when COVID was happening, I used to park in Forest Park, which is like a 10-minute walk or so to campus, which could be like pretty freaking cold some days. So it wasn't, I would say like overall, it's like not too bad, but just the driving part of it has been like my biggest struggle.
Thanks, Hannah. So I see a few questions about building relationships with the community and engaging with the community and the relationship between the school and the community. I'll open up the floor if anyone wants to speak on that. I will also encourage everyone to attend from 2 to 3 p.m. today. There's a session called Living and Learning in St. Louis, which is with leaders at the Brown School and Community Partnership. So they'll speak a lot more to like initiatives that the Brown School is doing to engage with the community and kind of what that looks like. But would any of our panelists like to speak on engaging with the community from the student perspective?
I think for me, one strength of being here in St. Louis is like, you'll probably hear it a lot in these kind of spaces, but it's a big small town. like, in that way, you have a lot of low barriers to like see this group, or, you know, like, hey, do you want to be the head of this, or, you know, help out with this community activism group, or be involved in this campaign. And in a lot of places there might be other, like, oh, you'll have to do other things, but like here, I think if there's, being a big city, you have a lot of like what people mentioned of like affinity groups, or, you know, like different religious organizations as well, that really are involved in the community. And I think that's a good place to start, just finding like a organization, or find people who help connect you to those organizations that speak to you, and then go from there, because there's a lot of opportunity within that to really ingrain yourself.
I'll also add in, I think my entire time at the Brown School, I've been really intentional about like living my life outside of the Brown School. Partly is that like that's where I've like chosen to live, and being like far away from campus, which makes it difficult to like study there in the evenings and stuff like that. But like the pros of the other pieces are outweighed for me. There's a lot of Young Friends boards in St. Louis. I've been a member of the Young Friends board of the International Institute for a long time, so that's been a great way for me to meet other like young people in St. Louis who have like similar interests in me, and also get grounded into like some of the work in like nonprofit organizations here outside of my work at like my practicum and all my other like experiences at Brown. There's also like, I love my yoga studio that I go to here, and that's been a great way for me to like build like relationships and community, and getting to know like the owner and like the local yoga studio. So there's and then also just like getting to know your neighbors and trying to be like as friendly as you can. Like my neighborhood has a bunch of like kids who like run around and play with my dog in like the backyard and stuff like that, which is really fun. And so just like being like open to that, and like waving and like being as friendly as possible, and kind of like just putting yourself out there as being open to it, and also like not trying to force it, because people might have like bad associations with you and they might not want to like reach back out to you necessarily. So kind of like doing your part and putting yourself out there and being open to those relationships, but then also not like, being understanding and like compassionate to like why people might not necessarily like be interested in developing that relationship with you, especially once they find out that you're a university student and potentially only going to be there for like 1 to 2 years. So
thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, in my experience, for me, I work with housing, and as part of our duties, we kind of engage with the local communities. So there have been multiple times where we've worked with some local nonprofits just to be able to serve the community. So mine wouldn't be direct, but we've had few encounters where we've been able to work with nonprofits who work within the community, and based on our student programs that we run, we kind of like factor that into that our service component to make sure that we're able to serve the community. But due to COVID, we're unable to do as much, but we still do virtual programming. We still do some form of like still supporting the community virtually if any chance of that sort of comes. But prior to COVID, it was in person, much more volunteering and what have you.
Yeah, definitely a lot of shifts in kind of the work that's been able to happen due to COVID, for sure. All right, let's see. Next question. What are some of your favorite study spots on and around campus?
I would like to say when last year when we were all on campus, I was always at why am I thinking? I was always at Olin because they had an actual Starbucks. Granted, I did love Grounds for Change. It was great. The people that worked there were fabulous, but sometimes I just like needed a blonde Americano, and that was like the only place that I could go. So like the business school, really solid. For a study spot, I would just like duck in and grab a coffee from the Starbucks up there.
Thank you. If you aren't already signed up to go on one of our virtual tours this week during Admitted Students Week, I'd also encourage you to sign up for one of those, because we'll kind of take you virtually around campus and point out a few other study spots that you might want to look into. But Olin Business School and Library, with the Starbucks in the business school. I also spent some time there. Great, I see another question in the chat. Do you recommend or not recommend any housing management companies or landlords? Have you had any good or bad experiences? Would anyone like to speak to this? Before, actually, I think there is like a sheet of, I think the Brown School admissions, or maybe just the Brown School has collected. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's a different link. Collected a list of like housing management companies that have been, that students have had bad experiences at. But if anyone wants to speak to any, you're welcome to do that as well. No? Okay, if anyone in admissions has that, I see now there's a housing resources page. They might also have like some recommended people or some management companies that students frequently find housing with. All right. Other questions. I see one that we had in the chat is wondering how you have found the cost of living in St. Louis and whether you have found opportunities for paid work and if that's been manageable with school. So would anyone like to speak to the cost of living or paid work opportunities?
Cost of living in St. Louis is like famously affordable. I live like beautiful 3-bedroom, large room. I pay like $575 a month rent. The rent for the full apartment is $1,450. My sister lives in like a much crappier, smaller apartment in Brooklyn and pays like their rent's $2,000 a month. So like, you know, St. Louis has that going for it. Overall, you're going to find that St. Louis is like pretty affordable. The one thing that always trips me up in St. Louis, coming from New York, New Jersey, is that we have the same like sales tax on groceries as we do on everything else. So like I always buy my groceries and I'm like, why is this so expensive? But otherwise, everything in St. Louis is really affordable compared to every other place I've ever been in my life.
Thanks, Zoe. Can anyone speak to paid opportunities at the Brown School?
Yeah, so I have a master's research fellowship. So I work about 10 hours a week with a professor on a research project. And I think last year I found it just because it was sent out as like an email list. It was sent out like on a list of opportunities. So I would definitely say if you're interested in working at the Brown School or working for a professor, it's better to start early and just start looking now. And even if you find a professor who might not have a listing posted, but you're interested in what they're doing, you should definitely just go ahead and reach out because they may like offer an opportunity down the road.
Thanks, Polly. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Are you sure? I was gonna say yes to Polly, yes to the MRF, but if you were admitted and you didn't get an MRF, I didn't get an MRF when I was admitted, it's not the end of the world. You will get some type of role. My first role at the Brown School was as an ambassador in the admissions office. I worked in the Social Policy Institute. I worked as a graduate teaching assistant for undergrad. Like, you guys will be fine, I promise. Don't worry, it's not the end of the world if you don't get an MRF.
Second that. I worked as a research assistant in like 2 different institutes, like in various different roles as like a teaching assistant at like the graduate and undergraduate level. I think the question is more not like if you can find a job, but more like how you balance that job with everything else. And like balancing. So there are jobs on campus, like, I mean, I don't necessarily know what this looks like in the COVID world, but like people would like work at like the tech desk, and then they would be on call for like if any tech emergencies came up, but they could like do homework while they were sitting there and getting paid for that, which is really nice. And so some people chose to do that. I ended up doing more like research stuff because I was just like curious to see whether that was a career path that I wanted to go down. So that was kind of also like a resume builder for me. I also know there's like lots of babysitting opportunities, and there's like specifically like a Brown School like babysitting list. So you can work as like a nanny or like a sporadic, like you can do like one-off babysitting jobs. A lot of my friends have like kind of continuous like weekly gigs that pay potentially more. And then also people will like work at like coffee shops and like waitressing, like service jobs like throughout the city as well. But yeah, so it's definitely super, super affordable. But yeah, it's just all about like how you balance all of that.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, I worked at a server at a local restaurant during my first year, and it was great because I could work like a Sunday brunch shift and be done by 2 and still have time for like homework the rest of the day. Also, just a note that starting, I think this summer or in the fall, all on-campus positions are going to pay $15 an hour. So it's been climbing up to $15 an hour over the past few years. So that is exciting news. It looks like we have about 2 minutes left. So I just wanted to thank all of our wonderful panelists for being here. And yes, Hannah, thank you to the WashU Student Union for getting us that $15 an hour. Credit where credit is due. Thank you, Student Union. But yeah, thank you, amazing panelists, for your time and your insights. This has been really, really great. And yeah, thank you for being here. Encourage all admitted students to attend the Living and Learning in St. Louis conversation this afternoon from 2 to 3, which will be with leaders in community partnership. And then from 5 to 6 p.m. this evening is the Discovering the Humans of St. Louis session with a Brown School alum, Lindy Drew, who started the Humans of St. Louis page. And that is all. So thank you so much. And we hope to see you at the rest of Admitted Students Week. Bye.